This is Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast, bringing you insights and views from across Asia's food value chain. Now, for today's interview. Hello, everybody. This is Duke Hip, host of Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast, and we're very excited to bring another great guest to you today. We're speaking today with Dr. Gregorio. He's a director at Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or as we all like to refer to it, Circa, and Los Baños in the Philippines. Dr. Gregorio, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, we're very lucky and fortunate to have you. Thanks for joining us today. And so, as we like to say, in the spirit of the 5 good questions, if it's okay, we'll jump right in. The first question. Yeah. So first, before we get started and talk about all the tough questions, since I think there may be a few folks who are curious about Circa, let me maybe just share a little bit about on the surface level. Circa, as you know, is a nonprofit, of course, organization based in the Philippines with a mandate and proud tradition of building capacities in agricultural and rural development across Southeast Asian countries for, by my math, the last 55 years, I think, or close to it. So my question for you, of course, you're a long-time experienced leader in this sector, but not that long time at Circa. I think just the last couple of years. So my question is there something about Circa over these last couple of years, these first 2 years for you leading the organization that you didn't expect? Maybe something about the issues or the people or the work that maybe you didn't expect and you find a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I'm in my previous career, I was a geneticist, a plant scientist, a plant breeder, and my work focuses on rice breeding or crop breeding or genetics. It sounds so different from what I'm doing now at Circa as a center director, which is more on institutional leadership and management role in research and education. So it's quite a different level. Before I talk to plants only, now I'm talking to people and different institutions, even different governments or the ministry. So from focusing before on rice or on corn, which I'm doing much of that, I now get to deal with bigger pictures of agriculture and different disciplines involved in it, economics or environment and all those things. But what is surprising here are not the differences, but the similarities. So in breeding, we have to consider the internal and the external stresses, or because I work on abiotic stresses in rice, we have to review historical findings, literatures, and doing all these things. The present empirical evidence to come up with sound conclusions. That's the very science of it. We have to place systemic and interdisciplinary approach. So those are the similarities. These are all the applications when we are managing a regional organizations like Circa. We have to do a lot of planning, monitoring, and evaluation. At the same time, we discover and maximize the opportunities that come on our way when finding out as we go as planned. Okay, but actually the similarities is like breeding or crop breeding. It starts with a seed. So like in institution, it starts with a plant. If you have a good seed, you have a good harvest. If you have a good plant, you have a good products for the institution. So that's my, yeah.
Very, very, very wise answer. No, it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of similarities, certainly. Well, we'll pivot over to maybe some of the more in-depth questions now about the region. So as you know, one of the big challenges for the region is the growing, the world is the growing population, right? I think the UN has said that the population is on track to reach between 9 and 10 billion by the year 2050, which seems like a long time away, but actually not that far off. And in addition to that, there's some challenges specifically with Asia, certainly ASEAN, but Asia as a whole, the larger region. Around the fact that we've got a question around the health, nutrition of some of the folks in our region. Specifically, I believe one of the statistics says that nearly 2 billion people can't afford a healthy diet currently in Asia, and 2/3 of the children suffer from the physical effects of malnutrition. Again, this is from the UN, not me, but they're troubling statistics and trends. And so in light of that, what do you think are some of the things we can do, maybe collectively as stakeholders, do a better job of ensuring there's a safe, nutritious, and affordable supply of food to feed that growing population here in the region?
Yeah, actually, as you see now with the pandemic and with the situation also, before the pandemic, we have all those problems and the nutrition, the food availability, and of course, the climate change also. We could see that the food and nutrition security challenges of the Southeast Asian region remains to be perennial concern now, and it now requires more decisive and systematic actions. We have to put our forces together to make it systematic, not bit by bit, which a lot are lagged behind. So any decisions now on transformative action towards achieving sustainable food and nutrition system must be, I have 5S now, must be scaled, must be systemic, must be science-based, and society-focused and sustained. This is a very general question, but we could go into specific maybe in the next conversation we have. So that's what Circa is doing. We should have to make these 5 scaled, systemic, should be science-based, society-focused, and sustained. And we envision to strengthen actually our major food system in each country of Southeast Asian region. You have to operationalize by integrated innovation. You have to integrate all in a beautiful way. We have to weave it nicely so that we have to consider our innovation in, we'll call it 5 P's. We have the people, we have the place, we have the process, and we have the pockets, which is the profit, which is to be sustainable. So again, the 5 P's, before we have the 5S, we have the place, we have to consider the place, the environment, you have to see the process, you have to think about the pockets, which is the profit, and of course the people, which is very important. It's the whole aspect of the society. And how to achieve this? This is the challenge. We need the urgent innovation in research and education, which this is very near my heart, which is very near Circa. Research and education to increase efficiency across the supply chain, and the massive promotion of responsible consumption that takes pride in the Southeast Asian culture and lifestyle. So it should be under a Southeast Asian perspective. We should not just be copying from the other countries, especially we are different environment, different culture. We should have our own framework to make this happen. We have to consider our own culture, our own food system. So in general, that's my short answer to that, a very general question also, because I know we could go to the specific based on those answers. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a great answer. And I think what you said, you hear others certainly say it too. It's a holistic approach, and you've got to consider the regional context. It makes a lot of sense. Well, that brings us to the third question. And something you touched on in an answer around food systems. You mentioned food systems, and that makes me think about something I know that's happening this year. Big discussion that's happening. The UN is driving this 2021 UN Food Systems Summit that's taking place. And as you know, that summit is all about looking at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs that are much talked about, and are we on track with a lot of these as we get closer and closer to some of the 2030 timeline. And so I know in that spirit, last month, Circa, along with CropLife Asia, carried out an independent dialogue to really hear from regional stakeholders. In this case, it was regional farmers who are such a key stakeholder here in this region for so many reasons. But to hear from them directly on a number of different issues. And I'm wondering if you might be able to share as well, before I jump to that, the name of the dialogue, or the title of the dialogue was Transforming Pathways, Working with Farmers and Agri-Food Systems. And I think that name really captures the spirit of what that dialogue was all about. But would you mind sharing maybe what some of the top takeaways were from that discussion and what we heard from farmers?
Yeah, actually, that's a very, very nice dialogue where we are hearing the concern, and it becomes the platform for the farmer to voice out their concerns, at the same time their achievements in how they contribute the food system. So from the farmer's point of view, there is a need. They mentioned that there is a need to improve emphasis on consumer concern for healthy and nutritious food, and this includes also improving the nutrition of our traditional foods. There's also concern about the environment. This is reflected in the government programs and farmers' practices, but more information is needed to heighten the farmers' awareness and involvement in environmental stewardship. So environment is a very prominent in the discussion. There's also points raised on farmers' empowerment through associations or cooperatives, technologies for cost reduction, that is very concerned for the production side of it, and yield maximization in the context of monoculture. So we are talking about farm clustering and financial technologies also, which the farmers need in this time of to contribute more in the food system. So generally, we have to improve the understanding of food system concept and the roles of farmers in shaping it. They have a big role in this, and they just want where they could go into the whole process of the food system. So in general, that's what have been discussed.
Yes, I hear you. Well, that again, I think that it speaks to a fact about agriculture here in Asia. So many smallholders whose voices are kind of get lost in the shuffle with a lot of these big discussions. I think it's so important, and clearly sounds like it was a successful initiative. So that brings me to the fourth question. And since we're on the topic of farmers, maybe we should stay there and talk a bit more, noting that again, smallholders are 85%, I think, of the world's smallholders are right here in Asia. And Asia is also home to the smallest size farms, the largest number of smallholders, as I noted, and such a unique story they have to tell. I wonder, beyond what we heard from the farmers with the dialogue that we just got into, you shared about from last month, that dialogue with the farmers that you heard from Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. What else needs to be given thought to and done to make sure that these farmers have what they need to be successful, and as you noted too, being good stewards of the land at the same time on those environmental issues?
Yeah, actually during the UN Food System Summit Independent Dialogue, which co-shared by Circa and the Crop Life Asia, I shared our vision to transform farmers into new farmers, or I call it the trans farmers, with a progressive mindset, perspective on farming as a business operating in a modern agricultural ecology. So from a traditional farmer, make them having a business mindset to be entrepreneurs. With the new technology you have the trans farmers. So that's what I want to give you the message of trans farmers. And I would like to also to reiterate that we can accelerate this transformation through a stronger collaboration between the academe, the industry, and the government. Unless you have this triangle interconnectivity, it will not be sustainable. We need the academe to where the invention is. The innovation will go to once the invention is taken by the industry, that's where the innovation will come in, and where the government will facilitate and enable the two to make it really happen, to make the transformation really happen. So that's what I emphasize is trans farmer and academe, industry, government interconnectivity to make this happen.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. No, I think it makes perfect sense. And we'll move on then to the last question. And we usually with this question, this is the fifth question, we usually sort of take a step back and say, okay, we've talked a lot about the challenges, and certainly they come up in our chat about the environment, around climate change, and just a lot of issues that farmers are facing specifically. But is there anything you'd consider or point to that's happening you see as a sign of to give cause for optimism, something good that's happening, and you'd say maybe looking in your crystal ball from 10 years from now, you think this is going to be a good development in ASEAN, something that's going to be realized that you feel good about?
Yeah, because of actually because of this pandemic, I always look on the positive side. Because of this health pandemic, we have people, the government, the private sector starts to realize the importance of food, and now they start studying where the food is coming from, and they become very interested in food, and that is where transformation will come in. The government, the policymakers are very receptive to any innovation you want, because of the pandemic, we realize the importance of food. Even our children starts to realize the importance of food. So because of this, I could see we could now do the innovations we want, especially from us, from the academe. And I could see the establishment of the local food baskets will definitely transcend the pandemic. At the same time, the urban agriculture will be there. Many people now, because they realize that logistics, if their food is coming from very far, they start to have their local food security, local and even the provincial level up to the national level. So they want to have, even in the community level, they want, even from the home level, they start to have this community pantry. They have to have a secure community pantry within them. So urban agriculture, even from the cities, they start to realize this. On the higher level, on the ASEAN integration, will also play an important role for ensuring the free flow of goods and services within the region. So the policy of not hindering, but there should be an enabling for the different governments to the free flow of food within the region. So within that, that's my crystal ball that I could see now, that everyone is now going into food. The food system will now be more visible, and the government is now more receptive to fund research, at the same time anything about food production and distribution.
Well, that would be a great development. I sure hope you're onto something there around the greater appreciation for the role of innovation and just where your food comes from, and how it all comes together to make the food systems more resilient, absolutely, and sustainable. Well, Dr. Gregorio, we've concluded the 5 questions. You're officially off the hot seat of the 5 Good Questions podcast. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insights, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe. We look forward to bringing you another 5 Good Questions interview